What we're going to look at part of this unit is the HornetQ journals. A journal is the new option that's available in EAP 6 to persist messages. It's a complex file-based persistent model that we offers in the new HornetQ. What's journaling is nothing but a set of files that you can find them under the data folder. So here part of another production server here I have in the domain servers production server data. Under the data folder there's a messaging journal folder. That's why you find this HornetQ journal files. These are binary encoded files. You can specify how many minimum number of files you want to have when you start up this messaging system. So part of the configuration here in the domain XML file subsystem messaging, persistent enable, true, journal file size. You can specify the file size for the journals and also the minimum number of files. So in a real world you have to tune this environment according to the number of messages coming through your HornetQ system. And also it has other attributes. For example, let's take a look at the CLI here, part of the journaling. Just looking at the server default here, HornetQ server, read attribute name journal, and then pretty much you're looking at all the journal based attribute that you can able to configure. You can also see that part of our course guide also provides some of these attributes, things like buffer size, buffer timeout, and also the minimum number of files that you want to have, and then the journal file size. You can configure that. Now for example, if I want to change the minimum number of files, I can see how many minimum number of files I have here available. For example, showing 2. If I want to make the change on that, I can do a write attribute name a journal min files value set to 5. Now I have updated that. Now I can bring back the command on reading the min files. Notice I change it to 5. Now when I go to the configuration file, as you can see, reload messaging. Let's search on messaging here. It actually been modified to journal minimum file size 5. So let's take a look at these other attributes, other journal attributes here. The other attribute compact percentage. So whenever the message get placed into a queue or topic, it first get persisted, and so those are called active messages. They'll be in the journal files, and once the message is actually being consumed by the consuming application, it will be discarded. Basically they become inactive messages. So once these minimum files, all these minimum files they are all full, and then there's only a certain amount of messages are active messages. So 30% are active messages and all the rest is inactive messages. Then there'll be a kind of a garbage collection thread or Reaper thread that come along and then clean up these files. So remove all the inactive messages. So basically what journaling does is keep on recycling these files, and so you can able to reuse them for active messages. Now when it comes to journaling, there's other important attribute I want to point out here. Is the journal type. Let's take a look at the journal type here. I have by default configured with Java NIO. I actually have changed it here, so it's actually using async IO. Let's take a look at what they are. What's the difference between these two? So Java NIO, a Linux AIO. So Java NIO is using the Java new IO input output stream, part of the JDK 7, which is available. Which is actually give you much better performance compared to our EAP 5 JBoss messaging implementation. When it comes to persisting, it actually uses the database. But you can actually far better performance with using Linux AIO, especially if you're running JBoss EAP 6 on a Red Hat Linux platform. So that is actually the asynchronous IO. So it's asynchronous IO option. So you have to download and install the Linux libraries for that. Once you download the libio library, and it'll actually give you and changes journal type. The journal type, you actually have to change that. Once you change that type to async IO, it actually even give you a far better performance. So that's actually concludes the journaling. The other attributes here, we will actually discuss further more about them in the next class, which is Application Administration Level 2 class, JB348, and we'll discuss them further on those other attributes. So that concludes the topic on journaling.